Hi friends, and welcome to Adele Ashley Talks Books. If you are coming from my previous channel, Adele Ashley, you know that I used to do these videos pretty frequently. Every single month, you got a roundup video about the books that I was reading, the books that I was loving, the books that I am looking forward to. And you know what? It's about time, but we made our own channel for it, Adele Ashley Talks Books. So essentially, you're still gonna get the same videos that you know and love, but they are going to be on a dedicated book channel, this one right here. But if you are looking for bullet journaling content, you can still find that over on Adele Ashley. I am super excited to be back and chatting with you guys. I haven't done a book video in about 3 or 4 months, and I missed it. I missed talking about it with you guys. So we're back and we're going to be doing it. So as you can tell from the title, today we're going to be talking about everything that I read kind of from the beginning of this month, January and February of 2025. I do have a separate March video that is going to be coming out as well, just because I'm actually filming this in March right now, so I have not finished reading all the books I am reading in March of 2025. And then we will be back to like monthly-ish content, a lot more book content, a lot of all the things that I felt like I could not do over on Adele Ashley because I also had all the Bujo content and journaling and stuff like that. All of that stuff that I felt like I couldn't do there is going to live here. So without further ado, these are the 18 books, I want to say, that I read through January and February of this year. It was a lot. It was a busy month. It was a lot of reading for me, but we read some really good books. So let's get into it. So one of the first books I finished in 2025 was actually The Most Wonderful Time by Jane Allen. I started this on like December 31st, sorry. Yeah, I started on like New Year's Eve and ended up reading it through to kind of like the first few days of 2025, which is why it is on my January list. This is a holiday romance, holiday story. So it's basically The Holiday, which is one of my favorite holiday movies in book form. And it is exactly what I wanted to read at the beginning of the year. Essentially, it follows two women, Ramona, who lives in Chicago, and Chelsea, who lives in Malibu, who swap homes over Christmas and end up going on a journey of self-discovery and growth. Both of these women discover so much community, and they really only want the best for them throughout the entire thing. You have Ramona, who is who lives in Chicago and is hiding the fact from her family that she has broken up with her fiance, Malik. Her family is unaware of it. It's the first time that she is going to be spending Christmas away from her family and friends. And then you have Chelsea, who is really only doing the house swap because she needs money. She is a struggling artist, and they're looking for ways that they could keep her family's home within her in her life, how she can maintain it. And her agent essentially is like, you will be doing a house swap to pay for part of this as well. Along the way, like I said, the women discover so much more about themselves. They develop a friendship between them. There is like romance elements in this book. However, it's not actually like the central part of it. It's more about the friendship between these two women. It's more about them discovering who they are. It's more about them falling in love with themselves as opposed to like them falling in love with another person who is there. There's also a meddlesome neighbor who we meet very early on, and I think that it is so well executed and so realistic. And I think Jane Allen does such a good job of portraying how Ramona, who meets this neighbor, how she feels in this situation when she meets this meddlesome neighbor, as well as how everything kind of like plays out with this woman. It is like perfect. But that was The Most Wonderful Time by Jane Allen. It was one of my first reads of the year. It was a 3-star read, and I absolutely loved it. From there, I dived into The 3 Lives of Kate Kay by Kate Fagan. I picked this one up on a whim and I ended up absolutely loving it. It's a fictional memoir about a woman who has reinvented herself 3 times in her life. She definitely has this like shitty partner who puts her on a path that is simultaneously the best and worst thing that happened to her. And I think I'll be talking about this book and thinking about it for a while. It was so unexpected. It was not really on my radar, and I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about it, but it was just one of those things where I was like, this is intriguing. What is going on here? I wanted to know like what happened. I wanted to reach through the page and like shake Kate at points during this story. And essentially like Kate K is this author. She wrote this book. It was like this runaway hit, and then no one ever heard from her ever again. She just kind of like fell off the face of the map. Kate K is a pseudonym. It's like not actually what her real name is, and she just keeps like reinventing herself. There's who she is as a child, there's who she is into like teenagehood, there's who she is when she leaves her small town, and then there's who she is in present day and who she's like hiding as. And the entire book starts with her receiving this letter saying like, I am sending all of this information back to you now, all these letters and stuff, and it's from an ex-partner who is like, this is all your stuff, like you deal with it now. Years or like even like decades after this woman was initially like entered her life and exited it. So I am really enjoyed it. I don't want to give too much away of kind of like what happens and what plays out, but I will say like I was like, this partner is so shitty, but she like made your life, but she also like messed up your life at the same way, because if she was just truthful for you, like things would have played out a different way. You wouldn't have so much guilt. I just read the book. Honestly, it was so good. I also read We Were Never Here by Andrea Bartz. This was my in-person book club's January pick, and it had me both rolling my eyes and on the edge of my seat throughout, but it was still very enjoyable. The idea of 2 friends who hide bodies while on vacations 2 years in a row was interesting, but I do have to question how they remained friends throughout the entire thing, especially after the first death. I know that if I happened to step into if I was on a vacation with a friend and they killed someone in our hotel room, I don't know if I'm going to be hiding the body with them. And I definitely am not going on like a second international trip with them, but that's what happens here. They go, someone dies on the first trip, so they sign up for a second year going on a trip, and someone dies in their hotel room yet again, and they hide the body. And the story essentially follows like them in the aftermath of this. Like, we know this death happens within the first like 50 to 100 pages, if even. I want to say 50 pages of this book, like this person's dead. And the rest of the book is essentially the 2 of them dealing with the aftermath of it, dealing with like, who is this person? What happened? Please don't let us get caught. One of them wants to come forward at one point. It's just like a whole mess of the 2 of them hiding the fact that they killed someone on this international vacation and running from the law. I really enjoyed it. The ending of it is a bit of like, I don't know, it just had me kind of like scratching my head, like what happened? I need to know more. It does call into question a lot of the things that you think you know through the book, just on how it ends. And I'm totally not going to ruin it, because I think it's such a good ending for this story, as much as I wanted to know more. But yeah, I really enjoyed We Were Never Here by Andrea Bartz, to the point that I'm actually looking forward to her book that is coming out later on this year. I also reread Cleat Cute by Meryl Wilsner. So after The 3 Lives of KK, The Most Wonderful Time, and We Were Never Here, I needed a little bit of like a really quick palate cleanser. I was in a bit of a reading rut, and I just wanted something to just kind of like read really quickly. So I did Cleat Cute. I actually listened to it previously. I had read the ebook, and I really liked it. It follows Grace and Phoebe, 2 soccer players. It is queer sports romance. Grace has been on the U.S. national team for like 10 years. She is absolutely like, she's a superstar and everything, but she ends up getting injured, and she's working with like a club team. I don't know much about soccer, but she's working with this team, and the team has brought in Phoebe to cover for her while Grace is away with like at the World Cup. Grace ends up getting injured. Phoebe's on this team. She ends up being potentially a contender for the World Cup team as well. And the two of them end up kind of like having this relationship and going from there. Grace takes Phoebe under her wing. She starts showing her different parts of New Orleans where their team is based. And they end up becoming friends. And then Grace realized that she might actually have feelings for Phoebe. Phoebe is just her regular young self, in awe, like she has been in awe of Grace since she was a young child. She's getting to play with like her idol. It's like a big deal for her. And it was just kind of like a fun novel to revisit and like reread. I knew what happened throughout the entire thing, but it was just like a quick, easy palate cleanser that like drew me back into the story. And then made it easier for me to continue reading other books as the month went on. I also reread Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. So the reason why is because I had reread Fourth Wing for my book club, and then with Onyx Storm coming out, I kind of wanted to just kind of like bridge that gap a little bit and just like remind myself a little bit about what happened. So much happens in Iron Flame between like part 1 and part 2 and like all those different things going on and them traveling from place to place that I knew that I needed to like go back in and kind of like touch base a little bit. It was good. I still enjoyed the book, not as much as Fourth Wing. That being said, and like going back in and revisiting it did not help me for Onyx Storm. You know, I was really excited for it. There was a little bit of a snafu with my book when it first arrived. As you may know, last year I did a whole reading vlog for Iron Flame when it came out, and I was planning to do the same thing for Onyx Storm. And first of all, my book never arrived, which was a whole thing, and then it was trying to get the new book ordered and still get the special edition. It was a whole thing. We're not going to really get into it, but I ended up starting Onyx Storm on audio, and I can truly tell you that I did not spend a lot of time being like, who are these characters? You know, I think it's kind of funny. Violet does not learn characters' names in book 2 because they are first years and she wants to make sure that they live. So we never learn their names, but then she starts referring to them by name in book 2. And I was like, who is this person? And just kept on going because I was like, we'll figure it out. It was good. It was a really good book, all jokes aside. I do definitely think that it's a filler novel. And it kind of reminded me of like the 7th Harry Potter movie where they are just like venturing through a field for a good chunk of the movie, going from like place to place. Like that is this book, is them going from place to place. It did answer some questions from the first 2 books. I do think it brings up a lot of book questions for the next few books. I do think as a 5-book series, we knew that there was going to be a filler novel somewhere in there most likely, and I think this is it. And I think it might make more sense once all 5 books are out. My feelings about Onyx Storm might change because I do think that it opens up the doors and we might have gotten some answers or information that we don't yet know is actually important that's going to come up and be relevant in book 5, for example. So yeah, I think it's just kind of, it's there. It's interesting. I enjoyed it. It was a 3-star read for me. I did find it a little bit difficult to get through at times, but I also think that having my physical copy now, I know that there is a map explaining who everyone is at the front, which I definitely wish I had when I was listening to it because your girl was confused. I was like, who are these people? But yeah, I'll definitely be continuing reading the Empyrean series. I do still really, really enjoy it. The Lodge by Kayla Olson was one of my next reads, following Alex, a journalist, and Sebastian Green, who is a pop star. you know, it's a fun escape to a snowy ski resort set in Vermont. It had a lot of the elements that I love when it comes to books. So like a famous person, regular person romance. It was a forced proximity. There was hidden identity. And it was such a fun and really quick read for me. I did find that I figured out the big like twist a couple of chapters in. So I wasn't surprised at all. There was no like, oh my God, like that's happening. Like I figured it out probably like very, very early on. Like the first time this character was introduced, I was like, oh, that's who that is. So I wasn't really surprised at all, but I did really enjoy the novel. And I've really wanted to go skiing ever since starting this, essentially, because like I said, it's set entirely on a ski resort. And it follows Alex, who is an entertainment writer who gets hired to ghostwrite the memoir of this boy band member. And no one else has had the opportunity to write this memoir. She is intrigued. She wants to get more information out of our boy band member and like what's going on. And specifically, she wants to know what happened to one of their boy band members who just kind of like disappeared one day. He just up and left the band. And there's belief that the person who she's writing about actually kind of caused this rift between all the members in the band. So it's super interesting, super intriguing, super fun read. But yeah, like I said, I guessed the twist in this book very early on. And just kind of like, I think because I was able to guess it so quick, it did fall flat a little bit at times for me, because I was like, let's just get to this point where we know that this is happening. But when I look at Goodreads and other people, like they were unaware that the twist was even there. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a genius and just was able to figure it out. I also read Statistically Speaking by Debbie Johnson, which was easily one of my favorite books that I read in January. It follows Gemma, who has spent the past 18 years thinking about the child she gave up nearly 18 years ago. And when a young girl who kind of looks like Gemma shows up in her class at school, she can't help but wonder if she is that baby. So she knows nothing about this child. She just knows that obviously she knows that she gave birth, and for the past 18 years, she has been calling this child baby. She knows nothing about her family. She knows nothing about the girl, like where she lived and stuff like that. And for the past 18 years, she's a school teacher. She has been actually avoiding teaching like younger ages. So she is, it's set in Britain, so she's teaching like the highest level in their high school system. And it's essentially just that she could avoid it. But this girl shows up, Katie, who looks like her, who has the same birth date as the baby that she gave up. And she just can't help but feel like maybe this is actually her daughter. And she kind of what throws a wrench into it is that she also is accidentally becoming really good friends with Katie's mom. They meet in a yoga class and she doesn't know it's her mother at the time. They develop a friendship and then she discovers like, oh, this is Katie's mom. She gets the confirmation that Katie was adopted, and it's just kind of like this whole thing. It is a very quirky British novel, which I kind of have a soft spot for. And it was just it's a story of finding family. It's about forgiveness and opening oneself up to love and happiness. And it's honestly such a sweet novel, and I loved every single moment of it. And I loved kind of like how the story played out. It plays out in a very, there's one very clear way that it could go, and it kind of goes the opposite way, which is so nice and refreshing to read. Also read Spiral by Bal Cabra. So I don't know how I feel about this series. It's the sequel to Collide. It's a standalone. The first time I read Collide by Bal Cabra, I absolutely bashed that novel. And then I ended up rereading it and it was like not that bad. Because I was sent an advance copy of it when it got traditionally published, and I was really interested to see if the story changed. I don't think anything changed between like the indie and the trad publishing of this book, but it was enjoyable enough that I made the decision to read Spiral. Spiral was better in the sense that I wasn't so irritated as I read it as I first was the first time I read Collide. But yeah, I enjoyed it enough. I enjoyed Collide enough the first time to pick up Spiral. I didn't realize in first that this was set completely in Toronto. For some reason, I thought this was going to be back still at the university that they're all in, but this is like completely out of school. Like these are adults in this book. So it's not a college hockey romance, and hockey actually is like not actually a big part of the story at all, as it is in Collide. It's a fun read. It's definitely a formulaic read, like you know what's going to happen. I did enjoy a little bit of the updates on the book one characters and like what they are up to and what they are doing now. But essentially it just follows Elias and Sage. Elias is one of the previous roommates from book one who is now playing for the Toronto Thunder hockey team, which is like an NHL team. And then you have Katie, who is a ballet dancer, teacher. She's a dance teacher. And she does ballet. She's auditioning for roles, and she finds out very early on that she cannot actually get some of these roles because dance companies are looking for someone with a massive social media following to be their prima ballerina or to lead for them, which is not real life at all. Ballet companies do not necessarily care about that. But essentially she ends up entering into like this fake dating relationship with Elias Elias, it benefits him because it makes his team, the team coach, kind of like him a little bit more and keep him around a little bit more because he seems like stable and secure. For Sage, it helps her because it ups her like social media to be seen with him, and it's just kind of like formulaic is the best way to say it. Like it was a good book, but honestly, like now, like I'm about 4 weeks out from reading it, and I'm like, it was kind of forgettable, to be totally honest. It was just there. But yeah, that was Spiral by Bal Cabra. That being said, there's a third book coming out in the series sometimes next year, Revolve. I might read that too, so I don't know. Sometimes like fun but forgettable is like it's not necessarily a bad thing for me when it comes to some books. Palate cleansers. I read them, they're good. Keeps me entertained in the moment, and then I move on, and then there's sometimes not every book can stick with me forever. Speaking of continuations and palate cleansing books, I also read Cross-Checked by Julia Connors. This is a continuation of the Boston Rebels series, and it follows AJ and Ronan McCabe, two characters who we have met before. AJ is the team manager of the Boston Rebels, and Ronan is one of the players on the team and a newly single dad. And Ronan is proving to be a bit of a pain in AJ's neck. There's a lot of things going on. The two of them have a lot of history between them, even before AJ was the GM and Ronan was playing for the Boston Rebels. And then throw in the fact that Ronan is currently trying to renegotiate his contract for future years, and AJ is the GM of the team. They're just kind of like clashing heads the entire time. But then AJ ends up saving Ronan's infant daughter, in a very dangerous moment, and it turns their relationship around in unexpected ways. It's a really fun, heartwarming read. It had me hooked from start to finish, and it really was just a continuation of a series that I love. And I've said this before, I really like how Julia Connors writes female characters specifically who are very, very strong, determined, and successful in their careers, and who are not scared to continue pursuing their careers no matter what. In fact, like even in Cross-Check specifically, like there was a point where AJ ends up like wearing Ronan's baby in a baby carrier. And there's talk of like, well, what's this perception? The GM of the team has like a baby strapped on her chest sleeping. Like that's not a good look. And AJ is just like, you know what? If that makes people view me differently, view me poorly, then so be it, but I can do my job well. with the baby, like I'm doing what's best for my team. I'm here making sure this child is taken care of so that you can go out and play hockey and do what needs to be done. And I think that's like so real. Like you women a lot of the times are like, yeah, like there's a baby on my hip and I have to hold them, but I also have to like get work done and I'm going to get it done. Like the baby's not going to stop that from happening. And her characters all just like, they go after it and they're great and I love it. I also read a memoir. I read Educated by Tara Westover. So this was my book club's February pick. And it was a really eye-opening read that had me captivated from beginning to end. I wanted to know so much information about this junkyard. I feel like we heard all about the junkyard in it, but essentially it follows Tara Westover's story of growing up in an unconventional, isolated family. And it's both heartbreaking and really inspiring. I enjoyed watching her navigate her education, overcome obstacles, and learn to see the world with her own eyes and kind of like discover what the gaps in her knowledge between like what her family was saying and like what the rest of society is experiencing and living, and also kind of like coming to terms with that and moving forward. It was such a good pick for my book club this month. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think like I say this all the time, like every time I read a memoir, I'm like, oh, you should probably read more nonfiction memoirs. They're just so interesting to find out about how like people live, what they're doing, how they explore things, how they learn. I just really enjoyed it. Okay, so I also read Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, and there's a lot of discussion about this novel regarding the content and how they were like, people were surprised about what the content was in this novel. But I wasn't really surprised because it's all laid out on page 1. Like they tell you everything on page 1 of this book. Anyways, it is set in the college aquatics world. She's a diver, our female main character, Scarlett, and Lucas is a swimmer. Like her previous novels, it's set in the Ali Hazelwood set this in the college world, following characters in the STEM field. However, where it differs is our main characters are still undergrads as opposed to her usual grad or recent grad students, and science ends up taking like a major backseat in this book. It takes the reader deep into the college athletic world, especially with Scarlett, and it was a nice change from like her previous books. It wasn't very STEM heavy, but STEM was still there. We do get like a little bit where she talks about how she has to do this project or she's doing this or that to advance herself to go to med school in the future. But it was nice. It was a nice change for Ali Hazelwood, and I really, really enjoyed it. It is also probably her steamiest novel yet, as the characters enter into a consensual, dominant, submissive relationship. And I think she really did a really good job at showcasing scenes where they negotiate consent and boundaries. So this is not like a 50 Shades of Grey where you have like this poor naive girl and they're just like, oh, like sign this form, and she just kind of like goes along with it. There's a lot of talk about like consent. There's a lot of talk about like, will you and will you not want to do? And I know that is what a lot of the discourse about like the content of this book is. However, there's not a lot of like BDSM content in this book, I guess you could say. Like they just talk about how they want this dominant, submissive relationship, and Scarlett is very like, I don't want to have to think. I don't want to have to like do things. I just want you to pleasure me. And that's what Lucas wants as well. But they're not necessarily like very far into it. And I think in large part because this is still 2 college students who are entering into this type of relationship for the very first time. So they don't know what they want, truly. And I think that's kind of like what the benefit is. They do talk about consent and boundaries, and they talk a lot about how they are going to navigate things and how we can try this, but we can do something different, and how I'm going to do whatever's good for you and you're going to do what's good for me. But like that could change. And I think it's really, really good. And I think it's also really interesting how the helping and pleasing each other. They're not just talking about like a sexual relationship. They're also talking about like emotional and what they need to be better and to do, to meet all of their like emotional, physical, spiritual needs of these two characters. I did find them a really fun read. I found the characters very likable, and I really did find myself getting myself a bit sad when I had to put this book down and go back to like life and get things done. I wanted to know what happened next. I wanted to know how things played out. There is, Scarlett does have a friend who I was like, this girl is messy. And it does all kind of come to a head at the end, towards the end of the book. And I just really wanted to be like, Scarlett, stand up for yourself, and Lucas, stand up for her. And that happens, that all happens, but I just really liked it. I think it's not as bad as a lot of people have made out this book to be. And I think if you read the entire thing, like it's not, it's kind of like how I felt about Butcher and Blackbird, where I was like, oh, not too sure about a serial killer romance. And then I read Butcher and Blackbird and ended up reading like all 3 books in the series. So I do think it's just kind of one of those things where if, like I said, the trigger warnings are laid out on page 1. So if you skip past that, I can see how you're like, oh, I didn't realize this book was about this. But if you do not skip past that, it pretty much lays out what happens very clearly. And it is actually quite tame compared to other books. Like I said, 50 Shades of Grey was way, way more than this. So there's that. I also read Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. I was so excited to dive back into this because I absolutely loved the first 2 books in the Skyland trilogy. This Could Be Us and Before I Let Go. I absolutely was like obsessed with those 2 books when they came out, and I was so lucky I did get an advanced copy of Can't Get Enough as well. It is coming out in May 20th, I believe. I don't know. I will double check and put it there for you. But I am super excited for Can't Get Enough. I loved every minute of reading this book. It follows Hendrix and Maverick, and it packs such an emotional punch. Hendrix's journey of caring for a family member with Alzheimer's hits really close to home for me. But Kennedy Ryan handles it with such grace, showing the complexities of love, responsibility, and the desire for happiness as well, both for like that person you're caring for, but as well as for yourself. And while this is a standalone book, like you could read this without reading the previous 2 books in the series. I highly recommend reading the whole series, as the characters and storylines flow beautifully together, and you do see our characters from you do see Soledad, you do see, oh crap, I'm blanking on her name. You do see the woman from the previous 2 books and their partners show up in this book as well. This is a romance, though, so it follows Hendrix and Maverick. Maverick is like this tech billionaire mogul who knows exactly what he wants out of life, and ends up having this like breaking up with this woman who on paper seems to be like perfect for him. And then you have Hendrix, who ends up meeting him, and the 2 of them end up like entering into this relationship and falling in love with each other. But she's also unsure because she has so much going on between like her career and everything else, and taking care of her family member with Alzheimer's, and just kind of like juggling it all. And you see the 2 of them come together and learn to just like take care of each other and sacrifice and help each other. And it's just like such a good story that no amount of words I use can truly do it justice. I just cannot recommend Can't Get Enough and the rest of the Skyland trilogy like enough at this point. I also read Scythe and Sparrow by Brynne Weaver. It's the perfect conclusion to the Ruinous Love trilogy, and it might actually be my favorite in the series. It follows Fionn, a small-town doctor, and the 3rd brother, and Rose, a motorcycle riding serial killer with a moral code, who have incredible chemistry as their paths cross on a whirlwind of murder, chaos, and dark humor. It wraps up the trilogy perfectly. And it is kind of set simultaneously to the previous 2 books, so Butcher and Blackbird, as well as, why can I not remember names of books today? I don't get this. The previous 2 books in this series, I don't understand why I can't remember them, but it perfectly wraps up, but Leather and Lark, that's the name of the book. Butcher and Blackbird, Leather and Lark, it happens kind of like simultaneously to those 2 books. So you do have flashbacks, you do have some of the moments that are popping up that happen in like Leather and Lark, you end up seeing towards the end of Scythe and Sparrow and stuff like that. And the thing is, in the previous 2 books, we also know we finally get to meet Rose, this character who they like kind of talk about, and like how she's around in the previous 2 books. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. The epilogue of this leaves just enough mystery for me to be hoping for more. I think it perfectly wraps up the story, and I think we might be done with these characters, with these 6 from these 3 books. But there is like a little hint of a character from one of the previous books that I'm like, are we getting a spin-off series with her? Because I would read that. And like really, like this is based off of maybe like 2 sentences and a brief point of view of this character during the epilogue that I'm like, oh, is this going to be a thing? Because I am seated and ready for this book if it's going to be a thing. I have to say the entire Ruinous Love trilogy was such a surprise to me. I know that I was a little bit hesitant about reading Butcher and Blackbird when I first heard about it, because I was like, oh, it's a murder about serial killers and they're in a competition and like killing other people. And I was so unsure and certain that I wouldn't. And I know I talked about how I was ready to bail out of that series at any moment if anything happened. And you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't think I would end up loving this series as much as I did. I didn't think I would. When I finished Butcher and Blackbird, I was like, oh, time to read the second book. And I was eagerly awaiting Scythe and Sparrow to come out. So, you know what? If anything, read things that you don't think you'd like. You never know what you will discover and what you end up liking in general. But yeah, like I said, I'm sad the series is over, but I'm fingers crossed that we are going to get a spin-off series based off of that epilogue, because I want to know more. I also read an advanced copy of The Rival by Emma Lord, which follows Sadie and Sebastian. And honestly, Emma Lord never misses for me. I remember reading her very first book, Tweet Cute, and absolutely falling in love with her and her writing. And I have loved every single book she has put out since. It is a YA romance. And it's exactly the feel-good read that I need. I have mentioned before that her books always tend to come out at like the beginning of the year, and for the longest while her books have actually been my first book of the year when they come out. That was not the case this year. I did end up reading it in February, but I also read it during a snowstorm, and it was like the perfect cozy snowstorm read for me, especially since I had all like a whole bunch of sweet treats. I didn't have pancakes, but I had sweet treats that just were kind of like perfect while I was reading this. It has everything I love about her book. There's funny moments, heartwarming friendships, just the right amount of chaos, and like I said, delicious food. And, you know, her signature charming, lovable characters are there as well, making it like a delight from start to finish. Essentially, it follows Sadie and Seb, who are 2 kids who have grown up together, and they've always been rivals. At school, they were always fighting to be like valedictorian, top of their class. They have a bit of like a prank war that goes on between the 2 of them. And Sadie is under the belief that everything's going to be okay now. She's gone off to university. She got in the one spot at this university that is open to graduates of her high school. And then she suddenly discovers that day one that Sebastian or Seb is there with her as well. And he got in, and the rivalry is like kicked off again. Because she no longer is like free of him. And she later discovers she's going out to be, to write for a newspaper, like a campus paper. And she discovers very quickly that Sebastian is also applying to be a writer for this newspaper. There is only one position available for her. for them, and they kickstart their rivalry all over again, and they're kind of like jostling for the spot, and kind of coming into their own and discovering their own things. It was a really good book. I really, really liked it. And you know what? I am so happy that I got to read this when I did. And I know Emma Lord has another book coming out this year, so you guys are going to get I have an advanced copy of that as well, so you're going to get a review on that shortly. But it was a really good read for February. I really enjoyed it. Kind of at the same time that I read The Rival, I actually read Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice by Elle Cosimano. I am a huge Finlay Donovan fan. I've actually always listened to these books. Like, I've always done the audiobook of it. It's a fun series to dive back into. I believe this is the 5th. Finlay Rolls the Dice, I think, is the 5th book in the series, and the 6th one is out now as well. But I actually realized that I never read this book. So I had to run some errands one day. I popped it on and went on my walk while I did my errands and listened to it. It's definitely a wild ride. It's back into like Finlay's world and what she's doing. It starts pretty much immediately after the previous book left off. Like, the events happen in that book, and they get in their car and they head to Atlantic City. You have Finlay's back, Vero's back, you have the hot cop, her family, her ex-husband, the children are along for the ride. It's just like a really good continuation of the series. This one has a little bit more of like the mob element. So she's dodging mobsters, she's attempting a rescue mission for someone who's been kidnapped. It's just like chaos. In the best way possible. And the problem is I actually can't really say much about this book. It's the 5th book in a series, so I can't really say much about a synopsis and necessarily what happens in this book without giving away information from the previous 4 books. But it's just a series that just never fails to entertain me and is like perfect for me to pop on and go for a walk and run some errands and listen to, or if I need to like clean my place, like I'll listen to one of the books. It just works. Because it's not too like time consuming, and it's like funny at the same time. So that's Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice. Okay, I'm also gonna call it now. I actually think I might have read one of my favorite books of 2025 in February. And I know that is such a big statement, but I have been talking nonstop about The Favorites by Laine Farrago since I read it. I have basically been screaming about this book from the rooftops. It's dramatic, it's juicy, it's completely unputdownable, and it dives into the high-stakes world of figure skating, following a legendary and deeply complicated pair, both on and off the ice. So you have Katarina Shaw, and then there's Heath, and the two of them are ice dance partners. Katarina's determined that she wants to be going to the Olympics. She's going to win a gold medal for the US, and you know, things happen, and they just kind of like pick the story. They never really talk about what happens. Like, they go to the Olympics, some shit happens, and they just kind of like go off and do their own thing. And this book essentially is like a real-time narrative oral history. There's a lot of other characters involved. I did a combination of reading this as well as listening to the audiobook, and I have to say, if you have the opportunity to listen to this book, I highly recommend it. The audiobook is told, you get the different voices. There's multiple characters, and you get the different voices for the different characters. And it's just really good. The story spans years of ambition, rivalry, tangled emotion, all leading up to like 2 separate Olympics. And essentially it's Heath and Katarina who are like together for a bit. They split apart, they come back together. The cover says, you know, like they were to the world, they are like perfect to each other. They're like their obsession. Or something like that. Like, they just absolutely love each other so deeply and are so obsessed with getting to this, like, to the Olympics and getting this medal. It made me wish that this was like a real skating couple, because I wanted to go on YouTube and like watch videos of them skating. The story is just like so good. Like I said, probably going to be one of my favorite novels of the year. Like, it is up there. Like, I read this weeks ago and I'm still talking about this book. and recommending it to people. So if you haven't yet, I highly recommend The Favorites by Lane Fargo. I think, and also like, there's a quote that's floating around that I think perfectly encapsulates this book, where one of the characters says, like, imagine being so down bad for someone that you learn an entire Olympic sport. And that perfectly describes what this book is. I think it ends perfectly. I love it. If you can't tell. And like I said, I think it's going to be one of my favorite books of 2025. And then the final book that I read in February was The Charlie Method by Elle Kennedy. It's the third book in her Campus Diary series, which is like the spin-off of her previous series, Off Campus and Briar U. I've been a fan of those two books for a very long time, of those two series, I should say, for a very long time. And Elle Kennedy just writes books that are super easy for me to like go back to and enjoy and like read. Kind of like what I was saying, like palette cleansers earlier. It's like, I just know it's going to be a good book. It comes out, I pick it up, I read it, and it's going to be good. So The Charlie Method was a bit of a new kind of book series genre for me, because I typically do not read Why Choose romances, and this was a Why Choose romance. And she actually never writes, maybe she does, I don't know. She might have one in one of her other series, but I believe it is her first Why Choose romance in the Briar U off-campus universe for sure. Like I said, first time reading this trope, I did really enjoy the book, but I don't know if I'm going to like go out and seek other books that have this trope in it. But essentially, Charlotte leads kind of like a bit of a double life. On one hand, she's like the perfect buttoned up sorority sister who is like perfect and does everything. And then on her other life, she's kind of like wild. Like she goes out, she hooks up with people. She does a whole bunch of stuff that does not necessarily fit like her sorority's image. And then we have our other characters, Will and Beckett. So the two of them are friends. We have on a hockey team together. They play for Briar U. We previously met them in other previous books. And they like to, it's kind of like talked about how like they're into threesomes a lot in the previous two books. So they will go and they will hook up with the same woman. And the whole thing is that they don't hook up with each other. They only hook up with the woman in this scenario, but that's what like kind of like what they enjoy. I found that the heroine is super relatable, kind of like in terms of like, she's a person of color and kind of like how she's all like, I need to be perfect at all times and make sure that everything's like perfect so she doesn't get judged, and how there's a little bit of different criteria, I guess you could say, for different people. And I did find that it was super easy to root for her. I did find that the story felt a little bit rushed. So this actually covers about a year and a half, I want to say, in the story. And it is quite a thick book, and you do have like all three characters' point of view, but it just kind of rushes through it all, because we go through the entire school year, and then we go through about 6 to 8 months after that as well. And it's just like so much is happening that it's like, the ending ends up feeling really, really rushed because so much work was put into the beginning of the book. I did think this was really interesting. I do think Elle Kennedy did a really good job of kind of explaining what was happening, explaining what all the characters wanted, and then also not shying away from kind of having difficult conversations with people about things. So we do have Charlotte, Will, and Beckett all end up having conversations with their parents about the type of relationship that they're in, and how they're essentially a throuple. And I think it is really good that they didn't shy away from it. I do think it becomes very clear, potentially, that Elle Kennedy liked one character more than the other. And I question if they'd still maintain to stay together after the book ended. There is an epilogue. They are very clearly all together in the epilogue, but I question if that will continue in the future because I feel like it goes one specific way or another. So those are all 18 of the books that I read in January and February this year. I am super excited to see what else I read through the month of March, and we'll have that video up for you guys shortly. I just need to get through March first before we film that, because still a couple days left. I definitely could read 4 or 5 more books in that time. But yeah, that essentially is all. I'm super excited to have you guys here. I'm super excited to be talking with you guys about books on this dedicated channel and show you what I get up to around the city of Toronto. And until next time, I hope you guys have an amazing day. I'll chat with you later.